In live stream. We got it. Okay. Okay, all of a sudden there's music outside my house. All right. We're past Pesach. We're gonna start with with chapter 7, which is the last of the prakim that are written in Aramaic. I think I'm actually going to wait until the music passes by because I'm having a hard time thinking. And there it goes. Okay. I don't know if you could have heard it, but for me, I couldn't think and the loud noise going. All right. All right. So, like I said, we are starting with chapter 7. Chapter 7 is the first of the prakim that record Daniel's visions. This parak is written in Aramaic. The succeeding prakim about his visions are all written in Hebrew. So we have chapter 7 and chapter 8 are written in Aramaic. Chapter 9 we learned back in Elul, and it was a tefillah. We suggested that that may have been the tefillah that he was davening at the time that he got thrown into the lion's den. That it's time-wise and subject-wise, the two of them may very well match up. And then chapters 10 through 14 till the end of the Sefer are more of the visions. Ramad Valley, who has been accompanying us through this, has a perush through chapter 7, and then in addition he had a perush on chapter 9, and he said chapter 8 that the visions that were written in Hebrew are completely satum. He didn't have any, even for him as a Kabbalist, he felt that there was nothing to say. My sense of those visions, I'm not sure that we're going to get into them at all. I think I may call an end to this at the end of chapter 7. I may look at chapter 8 a little bit and maybe pull a verse here and there from the last prakim, but we're not going to go into them in detail. Daniel, starting in this chapter, when he doesn't understand what's going on, he turns to some angelic being that's available to him in his prophetic visions, and he asks for clarification. So this is somewhat the same, somewhat different from other Nevi'im that are in the part of Tanakh that we call Nevi'im. Yechezkel is often spoken to by an angel. There are others who say Hamalach Hadover, be the angel that's speaking within me. But what we see with some of the other, starting with Yirmiyahu, well, maybe not starting with him, but certainly Yirmiyahu is a good example of it, is that God or the angelic being will turn to the Navi and say, so tell me what you saw. And the Navi will put it into his own words. And what do you think that means? As opposed to, and then there is some explanation that comes from outside, but it's sort of more of a push to the Navi to dig down deep inside himself and to say, what is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealing to me with this vision? Daniel sees things and doesn't know what he's seeing, doesn't understand what he's seeing, asks the Malach or this heavenly being to explain it to him, and he gets an explanation. So just as Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, didn't know what he was dreaming, turned to Daniel. Daniel was able to explain it to him. Okay, but Paro had a dream, didn't know what he was dreaming, turned to Yosef. Yosef was able to explain it to him. But Daniel needs an interpreter of dreams for himself, which is different from the others. And we're going to already see that in this chapter. And in the later chapters, what happens is that he asks the angel to explain it. And the angel explains like part of it and then says, but really, you're just meant to see it, to bear witness to it. There is no explanation until the end of days. So there's essentially Daniel's other visions are a promise that the end of days will come. I have the sense that what we're being told is that when we get to the end, we can look back at Sefer Daniel and say, see, that worked out this way. This is how that worked out. It all worked out. Oh, that's what was going on. But for us to be able to use Sefer Daniel to predict what's about to happen, that not so much. And the Sefer itself says, it's a tomb, it's closed off, it's hidden, it's not. So it wasn't just that Daniel was on a lower level in some way, perhaps, than the other Nevi'im that he couldn't come up with. The answers weren't meant for him to be able to come up with them. All right, so I'm going to now share my screen so that we can read Sefer Daniel. And what I'm going to try to do this evening is I'm going to read through, if I can, I'm going to read through the whole dream. Not where he turns to the angel or the heavenly being and asks for help in understanding it, but I'm going to go through the Aramaic first. Unlike previous prakim, we have no perush from the Al-Sheikh. We have no perush from the Chidah. We do still have Malbim. We do still have Ramat Valley for chapter 7. Malbim, unlike the earlier prakim and unlike his normal style in Perush, does not ask questions. He asks questions. He compares this verse to that verse. And I was trying to come up with on my own. So this is just for me, not because I saw it in a source. Why is it that the Malbim, didn't ask the types of questions that he normally asked? And the answer, I think, is that when the Sefer in question, whether it's Chumash or whether it's Nevi'im or whether it's Ketuvim, when the Sefer is describing something that is happening and you think you understand, but you're like, why is there this particular diuk? Why is it precisely this language and not other language? What's hiding there in the words? And, I would have thought it would be this way. And so why was it that way? But when you're talking about a dream, we all know that dreams are kind of bizarre and they jump from here to there. And, why is that detail in the dream? Even prophetic dreams have a certain amount of shtut in them. Shtus. And so one possibility is that Malbim felt, you could always answer any question you could come up with. You could answer by saying, because it was a dream, it was a night vision. It was, it's not that Daniel was choosing his words in order to give a message of theology to the people that he was speaking to or to the generations to come. He's describing this vision. But at any rate, we don't have questions. And people like the Alshi, who also ask questions, didn't even give us a perush on this parak. So the questions that are going to sort of drive what we're looking at are really going to be more my questions, because I don't have other people who ask questions. Anyway, so it's going to be a little different from how the previous 6 prakim have gone. With that, we start off with sort of a title sentence that sets the scene. It gives us the time. B'shnat chada Belshazzar melech Bavel. In the first year of Belshazzar. Now, we've already heard, because in the stories, we heard during the second year of Belshazzar, at the very end of his reign, right? That was the handwriting on the wall story. Okay. And then we heard about what happened afterwards, because we heard about, Daniel in the lion's den was not about, yes, right. That was about the tefillah, because that was the whole thing with the people who were jealous of him, got the king Darius the Mede to be able to make this decree that you can't ask for anything from anyone other than the king. But of course, Daniel continued davening. And that was that story. So the tefillah may very well, the tefillah in chapter 9 went with the story of Daniel and the lion's den, which actually follows on this. But we're here, we're in chapter 7. And we're in the first year of Belshazzar's reign. And Daniel chelem chaze. Daniel saw a dream, which is interesting language, right? Nebuchadnezzar chelem chalma. Nebuchadnezzar dreamed a dream. Paro, right? Chalom chalamti. I dreamed a dream. So Daniel chelem chaze. He had vision of a dream, because his dream is a prophetic dream that's being given to somebody who's on a level of being a Navi. And why is he not a Navi? Because all this vision, he gets an explanation for. The vast majority of his nevuah is, he wrote it down and we have it and it's part of Tanakh, but it's a closed book. And I will tell you that in preparation for this class, there were a whole bunch of people, Osai Gaon and others, who tried to, use those visions to do calculations of when Mashiach was going to come. And unfortunately, the majority of those calculations have already come and gone. In other words, it's very dangerous to try to make calculations ahead of time. You make the calculate, but like it was dangerous just in the short period of time between Bayit Rishon and Bayit Sheni. It was going to be 70 years, but 70 years of what? 70 years starting when? The length of time that we were going to be in exile in what turned out to be Mitzrayim, right? According to Brit Bein B'Tarim, was going to be 400 years, 430 years. It was 430 years from Brit Bein B'Tarim. It was 400 years from Yitzchak's birth. It was only 190 years in Mitzrayim. But the promise had been it was going to be 400 years. So it's like, if you don't know when to start counting, then you don't know when it's going to be over. If you don't know how to count, you have no clue. And so using any of these things as predictions, and a Navi has to give us nevuah that can be checked. And so Daniel's nevuah is only going to be able to be checked on that great day when Mashiach comes. And then we'll all get to understand what the heck was going on. And, then he's a Navi. But until then, He's not a Navi. It's written there to let us know that the end of days is going to come. Okay, to give us enough faith to last the course. But beyond that, we don't have. Okay, so again, he dreamed a vision, or he saw a dream. Chelem chaza. He had vision of what was going on in a dream. V'chezve reshe al mishkave. And it was these visions in his heart, in his head rather, okay, so intellectual, whatever, when at the time he was lying down. It's nighttime. Bedayin chelma. And after the dream, k'tav, he wrote, Reish Milin Amar. Now, Reish Milin Amar means what? So there actually were three different interesting explanations for that I saw. One of them is just, Rashi says, he wrote sort of like an outline. He wrote the highlights, okay? Enough, the highlights of the things, and, filling in all the details. Think about, like, you saw a movie, you have a dream, oh my goodness, but like there are all these details, and if I try to grasp on that detail, I may lose the other things. So he was trying to write down about this vision that he had without losing any of the important stuff. And so, according to Rashi, he only hit the highlights. That doesn't explain where the word Amar comes in. Okay, K'tav Reish Milin. According to Ibn Ezra, who also brings a similar parish to what Rashi said, and then Ibn Ezra says, but I really think that Reish Milin is simpler. It's Reshit Milin. This is the beginning of what he said. He had a lot to say about this dream. And in here, what we see, this is the beginning of what he had to say. Kind of deals with the word Amar and is understanding Reish in a very different way. The Malbim explains it differently. And he tells us a couple of things. Part of which is he acknowledges that, I take it back. He says, whether it's part of the Nevi'im, whether it's Torah, Nevi'im, or Ketuvim, doesn't matter. Before the words got written down, before Torah Shebichtav was Bichtav, it was first Baal Peh. It first had to be spoken, right? By Deber Hashem El Moshe Lemor, God spoke to Moses, and he said, saying, right? And he said these things, and then afterwards, Moshe wrote this stuff down. And even if you want to say that Moshe wrote the whole thing down at Har Sinai, which this is a machloket Tanaim and earlier, evidently Moshe didn't leave a clear Masoret to us as to exactly how he did this. And even if you want to say that the whole thing was written and that the spaces sort of appeared so that the words described what actually happened as things went on and happened. However you want to understand that the original Torah was written, but it was first spoken. And so Malbim tells us that. And he says, so he wrote this dream, but in order to write the dream, Reish Milin Amar, first he had to say the words. First he had to say it. All right? And then I take it back. I said there were only three. There's a fourth way to understand this thing about Reish Milin Amar. And that is, what we're about to hear is a dream, and I'll really give you like the big outline of it. It's a dream that has four repeating in it fairly frequently. four winds, four beasts, etc. And the Maharal in particular is going to tie this back to Nebuchadnezzar's dream and tie it back to Bereshit, Mamish to Bereshit, Tov, Vohu, etc. Choshech al pnei tahom, Ruach merachefet al pnei mayim. And he's going to tie these four, this fourness, it's that this is part and parcel of the structure by which the universe was created. Okay, and it plays itself out in human history, but we have archetypes that are referenced over and over again. And as we move through history, we see how some of these things played out. So we're past a good chunk of it at this point. At the time that Daniel had his dream, he wasn't so far into history. But because there's this parallel, I think this I may have gotten from Ramad Valley, because there's this parallel that everybody notices between this dream, which we haven't heard yet, Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue, whatever that was made, the head of gold and the arms and upper body of silver and the abdomen and thighs of copper, bronze, and the legs of iron and the feet of iron and clay. So there's going to be a parallel to it. And so Reish Milin, if you think of Reish Milin as being like the chapter headings, then the explanation is, I take it back. This may have been Yosef ibn Yahya, Rabbi ibn Yahya, whose parish we do have, and which is interesting. I think maybe he's the one who said this. And so what does it mean, Reish Milin Amar? He already said the chapter headings. Okay, what he saw in this dream and what he had to write down were the other details that he didn't get from, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. Nebuchadnezzar put his dream into words. Daniel heard those words, and with Siyata D'Shmaya, he was able to interpret it and to explain it. Actually, take it back. That first dream was the one where Nebuchadnezzar didn't even put it into words. So Daniel was granted a vision of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, but it wasn't the same kind of like immediacy as his own dream had. But he already had seen essentially the chapter headings. Okay, Reish Milin Amar, like as in really truly past tense, he said this already a whole bunch of chapters ago. So there are a whole lot of ways to understand just this first verse. However, the rest of it I'm not going to go into in as much detail. I'm going to let us hear the description of this dream for the next half hour, and I think that's where we'll call it. And then next week we'll start doing some of the parallels and whatever. Okay, so Ana Daniel Vamar. Daniel raised up his voice and he said, Chaze Havet Bechezve Im Lelia. I was looking on at these visions of the night. Va'aru. Va'aru is vihine. We have Ari or Are is the word ki. This word aru is like the Hebrew word hine. Vehine arba ruche shmaya megichan liyama rabba. And behold, the four winds of the heavens stirred up the sea, or caused the sea to empty out, depending on how you understand that shorsh megichan. But if you think about what happens if you have four strong winds coming from four different directions and they're struggling for primacy, which one is going to be, mitgaber over the other ones, and you can think of it, it causes a water spout. It causes the seabed to empty out because these winds are coming. And all right, so that's the description that we have for that first pasuk. Va'arva chevan ravrin salkan min yama, and 4 chevan is chayot. Okay, if you can see, it's really the same shorish there. 4 great beasts went up from the sea. So the shorish selek or salat in Aramaic does not mean to remove like it does in Hebrew, but it means to go up. Right? So they came up out of the sea. Shanyan da minda. They were different. Shanyan as in shoni. Okay, they were different one from the other. Kadmaita, the first one, ka'arye. Okay, it was like a lion. V'gapin dinasharle, and wings of an eagle it had. Chazechevat admrit gap. Okay, so I was, right, this is, Daniel is still speaking in first person. We're hearing his immediate presence through this whole thing. He says, as I was looking on until his wings were torn off. Unatilat min ara, and this aryeh was lifted up from the ground. Ara is aretz. Va'al raglayin, and on 2 legs, lying, right? So you've got the plural that means 2 here. Ke'anash hakimat, it was set up on 2 legs like a human. Ulavav anash yechivle, and the heart of a man was given to it. The heart, there are perushim that say in older texts, particularly from the time of the Tanakh, etc., the heart, rather than being seen as the seat of the emotion, the heart was seen as the seat of the intellect. And so it was given a human intellect. All right, that was the first beast. The beasts become weirder and more frightening as we move through the dream. Va'aru, behold, Cheva achri tinyana. There was another beast, the second one, Damya ledov, similar to, now, Aryeh was like the word in Hebrew. If you think of dov as being the Hebrew word, then it means it's similar to a bear, which many of the Mefarshim go that way. Rashi suggests that the rest of this is written in Aramaic, and that dov is also written in Aramaic, in which case there's a Daled Zayin switch. And so Damya lezev, that it's similar to a wolf. But whether it's a wolf or whether it's a bear, it's a great fearsome beast. And then it says listar chan hakimat, and it got up on one side. Star is like side or tzela. It's used as the Aramaic translation of tzela of the Mishkan is called a star. The same language, sin tet resh. So it got up on one side, whether it's a bear or whether it's a great wolf. But anyway, it gets up on one side, right? Or stood up, sort of kind of lurching, right? And then it says, Utlat il'in befume. And there were 3. So there's a switch, Aramaic to Hebrew, of an ayin and a tzadi, which switch. And so many of the Mefarshim suggest that this first ayin is really, in Hebrew, would be the tzadi. So it had 3 tzlaot, 3 ribs were in its mouth. It had been eating. Okay, it had these 3 bones in its mouth, bein shinei, between its teeth, coming out between its teeth. There was another suggestion that to read this is like 3 fangs. So in addition to teeth, it also had fangs, and then like 2 of them coming down. Yeah. Anyway, you've got this large beast, bear or wolf, right? And it's like lurching. One side is up. It's got these 3 ribs, bones, whatever, stuck between its teeth. Here are the 3 extra fangs. The Cain Amrin Le, and also they said. Now, Daniel doesn't tell us who the they are who said this, so we'll hope that the Mepharshim, we'll get to that when we get there to figure out what all the details are standing in for. They said to it, to this beast, Kumi, get up, Acholi basar sagi, and eat lots of meat. Okay. But Tardana, afterwards, Chazei Chavit, I was still gazing at this vision, Va'aru, and behold, Achari, another one, Kinamar, like a leopard or panther. V'lei gapin arba, di'uf, or diof al gabe. And it had 4 wings, not 2 like the eagle that the lion had. That's sort of a description of a griffin, I think. Which came first, I have no idea. This one is more like a leopard or a panther, and it has 4 wings on its back. Okay. And not only does it have 4 wings of bird's wings, the oaf, okay, that can fly, 4 bird's wings on its back, not great wings like like the eagle wings. The arba reshin lechevta. And not only that, it also had 4 heads to this beast. The Shaltan Yehivle, and dominion, rulership somehow was given to this beast. What that means, what the details are, how you can tell if all you're seeing is the beast coming up out of the sea, don't know. But they come up out of the sea one after another, and now dominion is given to this 3rd beast. Okay? So there's plenty of room for medrash and plenty of room for filling in the details, right? But Tardana, now after that, Chazeh Chevet, right, Daniel says that after that, I was still gazing at these visions of the night. V'aru v'hine cheva revia, the 4th animal, 4th beast. Dechila v'emtani v'tekifa yetera. So dechila is the word, many of us may be familiar with it from when we talk about L'Shem Yichud, right? And we talk about b'tchilu urechimu, with yira and with ava. So dechila is this word for yira. Okay, the emtani is like the Hebrew word la'ayem, to threaten. Okay, so it was dreadful, as in causing dread, and it was threatening. The tekifa yetera, and it was extraordinarily aggressive and powerful. V'shnayin difarzele la, because behave. Chevta is feminine word, so it's la, right? And so it had, or she had, right? She had teeth of iron, barzel. Ravavim, many great teeth, but they were all of iron. And they achla umedake ushara ushara, like consumed and chomped, and what was left over, the shara, anything that was left over that it hadn't chomped down, Baragla Rafsa. It trampled underfoot. Vihi Mashanya min kol chevata di kadma. And this one was different from all of the beasts that came before it. Now, one way in which it is different from all the beasts that came before it is that the first one was like an aryeh, and the second one was like dove or zeb, and the third one was like a namar. In other words, the first three that Daniel saw, he had some sense of, of commonality to things that he had seen in the world. But this last one, there's no comparative. Okay? It's different. Not only is it different from all the ones, di kadima, that came before it, but it's different from every other animal that Daniel knew of. It's not like this animal and it's not like that animal. It's just, that it was a living being he knew, but it was very different. The Karnayin Asar La, and it had 10 horns. Mr. Kahava, the Karnaya, and I was like gazing particularly at its horns. Va'alu keren achari ze'era silkat beinehu. Utlat min Karnaya kadmaita et akara min kadma. Okay, so I was looking at the horns particularly, and then there was came in, right? Another horn beyond the 10. Okay, so it's the 11th horn, right? And it was small initially, anyway. And it silkat, right? It's the same silkat salag. It rose up amongst the 10 horns. I have no idea, like 10 horns like a crown, 10 horns down its back like a stegosaurus. I have no idea what, horns, I guess we usually think of as somehow being on the head. There were 10 of them. And now there's an 11th one, small, that's coming up amongst them. Utlat min karnaya kadmahi et akara min kadma. And 3 of the ones, the previous horns, okay, were uprooted to make space for this one small one. And not only was this a horn, but it had this horn, not the beast, evidently. This horn, this new horn, had eyes ke'ene anasha, like the eyes of a human being. Ubakarna di uf. Right? This was on this ubakarna das, and that was on this horn. These eyes were on the horn. Ufum mamale rav, and it had a mouth that spoke. It spoke. Now we've seen Ravavan all over the place. It means gadol. It means mighty. It means Ravavin, right? Or the chieftains, or the officers, or whatever. The meforshim that I looked at were pretty clear to just, I'm not going to give you like what everything stands for, but at least to understand what the words mean, right? So everybody, also I have this lovely Sefer called Perush Hamilot that I've been using when teaching the Targum of the Megillot. It also has a section for the chapters in Daniel that are written in Aramaic. And it's not just a dictionary, it's a glossary. So first of all, what it is it's a glossary. It's a glossary for the Targum of the Megillot and for Sefer Daniel from Aramaic back to Hebrew. But beyond being a glossary, it often brings other psukim, or how we see the use of this Aramaic word in Targum, in other Targumim, other places, etc., so that if it's used over here, okay, to translate this Hebrew word, then when it's over here in Sefer Daniel, it probably means the same Hebrew word. That's part of how he works. But at any rate, so in Perish HaMilot, as well as Rashi and other Mefarshim that I checked, this Mimelel Ravavan, that it spoke, like it could mean just that it was just chattering all the time, right? Talking a lot. But they don't say that. They say it talked arrogantly, talked haughtily, right? The sense of being big and mighty and look at me. So this extra horn that came forth isn't just a horn, it's almost like a whole head, right? It has eyes on the horn and it has a mouth and it speaks arrogantly, all right? And so there's a little more to the dream. What we're going to hear basically, right? So now what happens to this fourth beast? We're still looking at this beast. Chaze, or Daniel's still looking at this beast, right? Chaze, chavet, ad. Wait a second. No, he's not still looking at the beast, right? He says, and so while I was still looking, until what happened? The Karsavan Remiv, that Karsavan, Kursa is actually like an armchair in modern Hebrew, right? Or in the Tefillah Friday night before Baruch, right? We say God sits Al-Qusaya on his heavenly throne. Okay, so there were these thrones, these armchairs, throne chairs, Remiv, were in this case not thrown, but they were placed. Va'atik Yomin Yatab, and this is a name for some aspect of the Shekhinah or of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence is called Atik Yomin. So Daniel now has this vision of God's presence, of this Atik Yomin came to sit. And what did it look like to him? So Levushe Ketlag Chiver, it's the Atik Yomin's garments were white, like tlag is like sheleg. The taf shin switch is a typical switch from Aramaic to Hebrew. So it was like sheleg. It was like white sheleg, like white snow. Usa'ar rashe ka'amarnaka, and the hair of its head was like clean wool. Again, Amar is the Ayin Tzadi switch, which is less easy to remember that it's there because it's not made with the same part of the mouth. Most of the letter switches that we have are made, you think about the Taf and the Shin are made right at the same place in the mouth. The Dalet and the Zayin are both voiced sounds and they're made with the same part of the mouth. So what's going on is there's a lot of change between sibilant and a full stop, but the Ayin Tzadi switch is different. Okay, but here again we have this Ayin Tzadi switch. So Ketsemer Naki looks very much, you can see it as the Hebrew if you want to, and Karsei, his throne, were Shrivin Dinur, like tongues or sparks, more than sparks, but like tongues of fire. And Galglohi Nur Dalak, its wheels. So the throne, the Kisei HaKavod, right, of the Atik Yomin was not only a Kisei, it was also a Merkavah. It had wheels. Okay, and they were blazing fire. The Hardinur Nagad, and then a river of flame a fire, stretched forth. V'nafak min kadmo. He went out from before him, from this Atik Yom. Elef alfin sham shune. Were serving him. The Ribo Ravvan, not Rav Ravan, but Ravvan. Okay, like our word Revavim, so it means, the fancy English word is myriad, but it means 10,000. 10,000 of 10,000. Kadmohi Yukumun, were standing there before him. Dinayativ, essentially like the Midat Hadin, the court sat. Vesifrin Petichu, and the books were opened. Okay, this is, so Daniel's not at all sure what the heck he's seeing, right? But there were the four winds, and then there were the four beasts that came up out of the sea, one after the other. He doesn't see anything about, at least not at this level of detail, of how one replaces the next, but he sees that one comes out and then it isn't there anymore, and the next one comes out, and then, I don't know, does it move off to the side? We aren't given those details, right? And the next one comes out, and the next one comes out. And then all of a sudden, the heavenly court descends. Where are the beasts? What's going on? We don't know. Okay. And Daniel doesn't know either, by the way, so it's okay. Chaze havet bedain minkal milaya ravata dikarna mamalat. So as I was continuing to look, then as a result of this voice, these words of arrogance, that horn, remember that new horn, the 11th horn, had been speaking. So what happened as a result of that? Haze havet adik tilat hevta pohuvad gishma yehivat likedat esha. So what happened was, as a result of the arrogant words that this horn on the fourth beast was speaking, it was killed. That beast was put to death, and its body was totally consumed and lost, and it was put into a burning fire. Okay, so the last of the beasts, the most awesome and fearful and different and weird of the beasts, okay, is now gone. Usha'ar chevata hediv shaltanho va'archa b'chayin yeshivat lahon at zman v'idah. So the rest of the beasts, this shorish, I think I've spoken about it before. If not, anyway, Ayin Daled Yud, that shorish has a variety of meanings in Aramaic. The one that's being used here, and it's also being used sort of in a hifil type of thing for sure, but the one that's being used here means lasur, to turn away. And with the hey at the front and the yud afterwards, so it means to lahasir, to remove. So their dominion, their shilton, was removed from them. But nonetheless, archa b'chayin yehivat lahon, there was a length of days, there was an extension of life without dominion over anyone or anything else, but they were to continue to be in existence. Ad zman v'idan, it could almost sound like, forever, but, for throughout time and season, but the vast majority of the Mefarshim will explain it as only for a some measured amount of time and season, not forever and ever, but depends on. I think there are actually meforshim to both sides, but the majority of them seem to think that Adsman Vidan means that there'll be an end, but for the time being, they're given a Richut Yamim, they're given length of days. Their dominion is taken from them, but they continue to be in existence, but now they're not the center players on the stage, as it were. Okay? Is this the result, these two things, the death and complete obliteration of the fourth beast and the removal of dominion from the first three beasts, but still giving them life? Is that the result of the court? Is it just there was a shift of scene, right? This is a dream. And then Chazeh Havet, right? Daniel says, I was still looking. Chazve Lelia, which is this, sometimes he just says, I was still looking and this happened. And sometimes he says, like, I was looking at this. And he keeps reminding himself, reminding us that these are visions of the night. Okay, so they have these aspects of dreaming or of nightmare that that doesn't have to follow the normal cause and effect type of normal cause and effect kind of things that we expect during our waking hours. And so maybe that's why he keeps emphasizing for us, yeah? Varum v'hine im anane shmaya kvar enash ate hava. Behold, there was a human, a man, who came with, born on the clouds of the heavens. Va'ad atik yomayim, and he reached, he reached to atik yomim. V'kadamohi hikrevuhu, and before him, meaning before atik yomim, they brought him close. They made him known. Okay, all of the servants, the Meshamshin and the Omdin, the heavenly Amalia, made him known. Hikruvu here does not, by any stretch of the imagination, mean that they sacrificed him. That's not what it is. They brought him close to make him known to Atik Yom. Okay. Which is its own issue because God knows, but maybe to make him known in the sense of to make him more. I can't even put it into words. There is there is something that's going on here of revelation and a closer connection of some sort, right? V'lei, and to this person, Yehev Shalton Vikar Umachu Yehiv was given, right? He gave dominion and glory and kingship, and all of the peoples and nations and languages of the world, they had to serve him. Shaltan alam dila yeda. His dominion is a dominion forever that will not be removed, right? We had that earlier. We had that the Tone I talked about it. No, I don't remember where the pasuk is. I know I talked about that shoresh. It's that same Ayin Daled Yud shoresh that we had seen earlier. Right here. I'm sorry, in pasuk Yud Bet, that the rest of the beasts, their dominion was removed from them. And here, by the one that looks like a human, okay, as opposed to looking like a beast, so by him, his dominion is a permanent dominion, that will not be removed. And his royalty, his dominion, his kingship, whatever, is not going to be violated, is not going to be injured in any way. So that was Daniel's vision. And he wrote down, I have to say that it feels to me in some sense that he only wrote down to say Reish Milin as in he wrote down sort of an outline of what he saw so that he wouldn't forget stuff. There are so many more details I want to know. If I were an artist and I wanted to be able to draw this, on the one hand, it gives me a lot of free rein for I can draw it my way, you can draw it your way. But I want to know what those details are so that I can put them in place. And I don't know what they are. Do I remove characters from the scene? Do I leave them there? Do they just get smaller in each scene? How do you, I don't know, because Daniel didn't give us everything. So for sure to say Reish Milin is sort of the outline, that's fine. To say Reish Milin is, he already said the outline, and these are more details on the dream that he had interpreted for Nebuchadnezzar. So that would already say to us about, Nebuchadnezzar's dream was about Bavel being succeeded by Persia Media, being succeeded by Greece, being succeeded by Rome. Other people have slightly other ways of doing it, but so in that case, is that what these four animals are? And so we'll hear what Maral and others have to offer us about that. What about the details? Is every detail in there important? There were 3 bones stuck between its teeth. Is the 3 meaningful? Is the 10 horns, 3 of which fall out, meaningful in terms of predicting history? Remember that Daniel is living, and this is the first year of Belshazzar. It's still the time of the costume. It's still the time of Bavel. It's almost over, right? Another year plus, it's going to be the turn of the Medes and the Persians. But that's where he is when he's having this dream. And so to be able to see in his dream how human history played out is, pretty amazing, but it's easier to do it when we're after the fact and we can say, okay, I see how that culture is related to the characteristics of that beast. And that's some of the stuff that the Maharal and Ramat Valley are going to help us do. Malbi Malsut and even Yachya. Okay, so I'm going to call it quits here. And I have to decide how I want to play it for next week, but I'll decide that by next week. And I hope that everybody has a good week. Thank you, those of you who watch this on YouTube or whatever. I thank you very, very much when you give me feedback or write me an email. You can write it either to moramath@gmail.com, or you can write it to Simchat Shlomo and they'll forward it to me. But I really do appreciate feedback, other questions, stuff like that. So have a very good day. Bye. Stop my share.